Awesome. All right, so where we're picking up today is on page 59. And we're right at, now you can correct me if I'm wrong. I actually didn't double check, but I'm pretty sure we are right at, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. So 59, right before we dive into the steps. And so what I figure I'll do is I'll take that first little line. You want to take the, and then I'll pass it off to you, and we'll kind of alternate that way. We didn't really talk about that. We didn't flip a coin this week. I always like tails. So we'll just maybe do it that way, unless you have strong opinions or objections. Pew pew. Alrighty. So when it says here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery, one of the things that I want to point out as we get into this is it is a report of actions taken. So bear with me. You'll notice as we go through the 12 steps, they are listed in past tense plural. So past tense plural, which is to say, this is what happened, but this is not what I did, this is what we did. So how we can look at it is a report of the actions of the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is the course of action that was taken. So here are the steps we took. And so as we go through, that's why it's in that format. And again, when I take a look at the idea of spiritual principles, for me, I take it through the lens of the principles are the tangible actions of the 12 steps. And it says, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Now, I got the original manuscript. I have a little version of it right here. It says, in the original manuscript, it says, now we think you can take it. Like, we're just going to lay it on right now. It's maybe good they softened it a little. It says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as your program of recovery. So in the original manuscript, before it was edited, before it went out to the world, it was softened a little bit. Now, I will point out, it says suggested as a program of recovery. Two things. One, the program of whatever 12-step fellowship you are a part of is the 12 steps. That is the program. If I'm not doing that, I am not actually doing the program. And if I'm not doing that and I'm struggling and I'm relapsing, I cannot say the program doesn't work because I'm not doing it. I'm doing other things, keeping busy with other things, but I'm not doing that. And I want to point out that it says suggested as a program of recovery. That's fair. There is nothing that works like less well than telling an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever, any human being really, what you have to do. Like I share this story. I was after I first got sick, and I was dying. Like not physically. I mean, although physically I was not doing well, but I was drowning in self-pity and pain and self-hatred. And there was a gentleman who was driving me to meetings, and he was struggling with his own stuff. And he was like, Paige, well, actually, the first thing he said was, Paige, you don't understand. I feel emotionally handicapped. And I'm like, well, one of us has got a placard and sits in the chair. So I didn't say that. I thought that. If I think it, I only have to amend it. If I say the words, then I got to make amends for it. So that's just a little trick for you. But then he said, Paige, you have to write a gratitude list. You have to. And that language did not resonate with me. And so you know what I did? I don't write one. I didn't write one for years. Ha ha ha! That'll show them no gratitude for you. Ha ha ha! And I was miserable. So I'm just throwing out why it says suggested, because we don't resonate with like you gotta, you have to, you must. Although we do have some musties in here, and so it is suggested. So nobody's going to make you do it. But I will say we don't have an alternative program of recovery. We don't have an option B. In fact, our only plan B, we spoke about at the bottom of page 25, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. Yeah, Howard got the visual for us. That's plan B, you know. And then plan C is drinking or using or relapsing again. That's the plan of action. So what we have is these 12 steps as outlined in this book. That's what we have. Absolutely, yeah. As Maureen would say, in the original manuscript, it's not half measures. It's hold up, half measures will avail you nothing. Like it is direct. It is that like pew pew language. Not well, it doesn't say pew pew. I'm saying pew pew because I'm tired. Uh, and wonderful. I love that you got the changes. So, yeah, I'll throw it over to you, Terry. You go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. I got a friend, his name's Scott Lee, one of my favorite speakers, and he would say, here are the steps we took, not here are the steps we looked at, and contemplated, or analyzed, or made fun of, or scared of. No, here are the steps we took. These are people, who's armed with the facts about themselves. Those are the people that know the medical facts of alcoholism, and those who have taken or took the steps. Now, what Scott would say is this is suggested as a program of recovery, meaning the steps are the program of recovery. So no steps, no program of recovery. So here's my definition of insanity. I've heard this before, is being part of a 12-step fellowship and not doing the 12 steps, right? So if you're here just hanging out, want to study and all that stuff, that's fantastic. But what's the point? What's the point? If you're not part of a 12-step fellowship, go do the necessary actions that could change and transform your life. So here are the steps, and these are a nice little version of it. What I like to do with them is uh, see, am I willing to do them? Yes, no, or maybe. And I was given this exercise by one of my mentors to see if I really am willing to do these steps prior to taking them. And we actually took a kind of a little third step, sneaky third step prayer right before that, right? We asked for God's protection and care with complete abandon. Who took that step and practiced that step? Or, I'm sorry, that prayer all throughout the week last week? Yeah. Remember, I told you when you take the drink, you become the drink. When you do a sincere prayer, you become the prayer. You become a demonstration of what it looks like to be protected and with complete abandon, that you are the child, actor, and agent of a loving father, a loving director, and a loving employer. Now, it's all we can learn about this stuff all day, but it's all about becoming this stuff. So I highly recommend that you practice those prayers as a way of life because it will help you with making amends. It will help you when people are unlovable, when you got to be nice to these people. It will help you be kind and loving towards people who you don't want to be kind and loving towards, especially family members. So, highly recommend you adopt these prayers in your daily practice because that's what it's all about, right? This is a daily reprieve. If I continuously practice this, I will delay my execution date my drink date permanently if I continue practicing this. So, all right, here we go. So we can take this as a group if you want to. One, am I willing to admit I am powerless over alcohol? And am I willing to admit that my life is unmanageable? And I would say yes, no, or maybe next to that. Now, and I want you to, and I've taken a lot of people through this process, and I've had people say yes, 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 and they're no longer with us or they're still drinking right now. They just wanted to say yes because they want to please the person that is helping them. I don't want to hear that crap. I want to hear maybes and no's, right? Why? Because I want to see what you're up against. I want to see what is fighting back because it's going to talk about cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. It's also going to say we have to stop fighting in the last on page 103, right? This is the stuff that will kick our butt. Now, if you say yeah, I'm sorry, no, or maybe what you're going to do is create a prayer for that particular step, for the willingness to do that step. And you're going to say that prayer in the morning, you're going to say that prayer in the evening, and you're going to say that prayer all throughout the day. And then one day, like a lightning bolt, it will hit you. You could call it grace, you could call it whatever you want to call it. You will have this spark inside of you called willingness to go do it. So, two, am I willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself that can restore me to sanity? Yes, no, or maybe. Three, am I willing to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand them? I think, Paige, if you want to go through the steps a little bit more thoroughly, you can. I'll do it this way. Four, am I willing to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself? Let's say today, and I've done this many times. Am I willing to do this today? I'm gonna say maybe. I don't like writing that much, so I'm gonna put maybe next to that. That's my current experience. Am I willing to admit to God, to myself, and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs and every little dirty laundry that I got in my closet? Am I willing to rip off the mask and be vulnerable to another individual? Yes, no, or maybe. And really think about that. Like, I don't want to tell someone my deepest, darkest secrets. I'm going to say no, F that. Right? So I'm gonna put no. All right. Six, am I willing to have God remove all? Keyword is all, my favorite word in the big book. Remove all these defects of character. Am I willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. What about sloth? Took me a long time. I got my butt thoroughly kicked with sloth for a long period of time. Was I willing to let that go in the beginning of recovery? Hell no. Hell no. I like my nap time. Who likes nap times? I do, especially in the first year of recovery. Problem was, I was 5 years in, still taking that, and I knew it was objectionable. Am I willing to let that go? Yes, no, or maybe. I'm gonna say maybe today because I started taking naps again. I have to say that maybe, even though it was kicking my ass in November when my dad died. Okay, so now I'm looking at my current experience with this, so I'm gonna say maybe because they're creeping back. Am I willing to humbly get on my knees? Ah, I threw that in there, babe. Humbly get on my knees and ask God to remove my shortcomings or my defects of character. Am I willing to do that? Who's willing to humbly get on their knees and ask God to remove their defects of character? Nah, my knees hurt. Screw that. I'm gonna say no to that. Okay. Eight, am I willing to make a list of all people I've harmed? Keywords all in this A step, everybody. And am I willing to make amends to them all? Keyword is all. If you have 400 or 500 people that you have to make amends to, who's going to be willing to do that? I'm going to say maybe on that. Keyword is all. I mean, that is one of the most important things I got to pass along to you. That's why I need steps 10 and 11 and 12 and with an acquisition of power or relationship with power to make every single one of these amends. Because at this point, I was scared hopeless to make these amends, especially just looking at them. They were daunting. I might want to do that. I'm going to say maybe. Am I willing to make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others? Now, I thought myself was another. No, no, that's an easier, softer way. There is a way to make amends to every single person on your A steps list without hurting them or yourself. If you don't know how to do that, I'll put my number in the chat. I will help you out. Or if I don't know how to do that, because it's probably the most spiritual thing I could tell someone is I don't know, but I do know someone who does. Maybe Paige F in Calgary, Canada. Right? And maybe she knows how to do it. Am I willing to make direct amends, eyeball to eyeball? And if they don't want to see me, am I willing to do that over the phone? Right? Am I willing to do whatever it takes? Yeah, I'm gonna say maybe on that. Okay. Am I willing to continue taking personal inventory for the rest of my life? Oh, damn. Who threw that in there? See, the key word in the 10 step is to continue, right? Am I willing to do this for the rest of my life? Yes, no, or maybe. I'm gonna say maybe. I just was helping a guy that I've been working with for the last 2 weeks, and we're on the 10th step. Actually, he's on the 12th step, and he got me motivated to start practicing watch, ask, discuss, turn more often because I was getting a little complacent with that. Now, am I willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. I'm going to say maybe more towards the yes to today. And when I'm wrong, am I willing to promptly admit it? Yes, no, or maybe. Right. Sometimes I don't like to admit I'm wrong. Yeah, I just kind of walk away, and hopefully that amends or that disturbance goes away on its own. Hey, here's the deal with not making amends. It's like driving with a flat tire and hoping and wishing that flat tire goes away. That's just been my experience, right? There's an amends I need to make. Yesterday, I got to find this woman who lives in my building. The elevator was broken, and she said, she was being a little touchy and didn't want to walk up the stairs. And she said a snarky comment. And you know what I did? I responded with a snarky comment as well, Paige. All right. Yeah, I got 6 years sober and a grand the wind stopped blowing. All right. Look at me. I'm sober. Look, I'm a flawed individual. I love talking about my mistakes because they help me grow up. Now, if I see that woman today, I am willing to make amends to her and make things right because I was not kind. I was a producer of confusion and disharmony with her. right? I did not leave that conversation in good standing. Hence the season why I'm willing to do that today. Okay, am I willing to seek through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him? Yes, no, or maybe. Am I willing to pray only for the knowledge of God's will for us? Yes, no, or maybe. And am I willing to carry that out? Yes, no, or maybe. Yet again, be honest. This is not to please anyone. It's not to please me. It's to really help you with yourself. And are you willing to grow up? Like this is the whole point of this. This is why we are here doing this study, because someone in here is looking for a new level of freedom. Right. So if you're looking to get past that wall, or that you could call it a winter season, right? You could call it whatever, or you could call it the weeds. Look at these steps, and am I willing to actually do them? Yes, no, or maybe. And if you do say maybe or no, create a prayer for the willingness to do it. And having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, am I willing to carry this message to alcoholics? Yes, no, or maybe. What about listening to a fifth step on Super Bowl Sunday if my Jets are hypothetically in the Super Bowl? Then, yeah, that's I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say no on that. I'm a flat no right now. Honestly, right? I mean, I remember I was talking to some guy in over in Europe, and I remember asking him that question, and he liked the Grand Prix, and I was like, the racing and stuff like that. And I'm like, what's your favorite sport? He's like, oh, I love the Grand Prix. I'm like, all right, well, when's the dot 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 their championship? He's like, this date, that date. I'm like, all right, what happens if you have to listen to a fifth step during that time? He's like, F that. And he said yes to every single one of the ones before that. But when we dive a little bit further, and I shake that a little disturbance inside you, that little selfishness button that's in you, and that's what I'm looking for, right? Are you willing to do that? And am I willing to demonstrate these principles in all my affairs? Probably one of the most important things that I could possibly do is demonstrate these principles in all my affairs. It's cool that I could, go to an AA meeting and sound really cool. I know the big book, I know history, I know people, I'm friends with everybody in AA, I have a fellowship and all that stuff. But am I going home and I'm lying to my wife about, let's say, not lying to her by omission, by not telling her the full truth that I want to speak tonight, but I'm not going to tell her because I know that she doesn't want me to speak. But I might say it at the last second that I'm going to speak, just so that it would push it to against the wall to say yes, even though I am shaking things up at home. That's happened to me for a long time, where I fell in love with my own voice that everybody liked it besides my wife. Right. And that's what happened. And my wife did not like me when I was speaking all the time. You know why? Because I was spending way more time with these other people and this fellowship, that the life that AA gave me, than that. What I was doing was I had unbalance in my life. I was not demonstrating these principles or these steps or the spiritual principle of balance at home. Now, am I willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. Am I willing to be nice and kind and loving to a boss who doesn't even say morning to me every single day, who's super grumpy at work? Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to kill him with kindness and love? Uh, Maybe, because I want to say, I want someone to say good morning to me too. If I say good morning to you, I expect you to say it back. He doesn't say it back to me. Am I going to forgive him? Am I willing to do that? I'm going to say maybe. All right, back to you, Paige. Pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew. I love that. And I love that approach that you take. And I'm always so big on, like, if there is resistance, let's meet it with prayer. So I love that addendum to the that you've added, where it's like, yeah, because the needed power isn't here. I don't have the power, but there is a power. And how do I begin to access it? Right? I begin to seek it. So yeah, I'll break down the steps as well. So let's go back to page 59. So it says, we admitted. Now, one of the things that I'll point out, because Maureen's put it in the chat, and I'll point out if any of the differences that I got in the original manuscript. And if I forget one, Maureen will let me know. And I mean that with love. Like, you'll be like, you forgot one. And I'll be like, thank you. I don't stand much, but I always stand to be corrected. Ayo. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Are you willing to pray on your knees? The problem is not getting on my knees. The problem is then getting back up. That's where the issue lies. Then my prayers go to God help, help! I'm stuck. I can't get up. Yeah. Oh, I'm a disaster factory. Also, as we go through these steps, I often reference a group called YPA. It's Young People of AA. And as we go through, like reading how it works at like YPA groups or YPA conventions, they have what are called call outs. Yeah, where people will yell things. And yeah, like last week we spoke about like, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful, and people will yell, and expensive. Or like half measures avail us nothing, oh man, only half or not even half, like people have those call outs. So if we have any fans of the TV show Friends, what I want you to know is we go through reading, yeah, so we go through reading the numbers. So we'll say one and people will go seven, seven, and just yell seven as you go through. When we get to step number seven, people will cheer. And if you don't get what that is in reference to, that's okay. I have a feeling I shouldn't explain it. You should just look it up on your own. That's the vibe that I'm picking up on it for what's appropriate for the big book study. Yeah, like a 5, 6, 7. Some of you got, yeah. Alrighty, okay. One. We admitted, again, it is past tense plural. It is the report of the actions of the people, the first 100, the first 80. But I'm a big believer that the more of us who follow these directions, the more of us that are implicitly included in the we, as Terry talks about. This is a book of mirrors. And I can hold my experience up in step one. And just as much as I can hold my experience up in the later steps and in the promises. Is that my experience? Is my experience mirroring what is promised? Is my experience, as we were saying, like at this point, naturally, we're like, do we want to do it? Yes, no, maybe. But there's also like, have I done these things, right? Has this been a mirror? So it says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And this is the most exciting part of the big book study. Hold on. Brace yourselves. I'm going to explain the difference between an M dash and an N dash. Woo! Sexy grammar. Woo! Go back to number 7. Woo! Yeah, that's a woo hot stuff over there. So, did you know that a dash, that little line that's not hanging at the bottom, that's right in the little middle, that there's two types of those. There's an M dash, which is the longer one that we see, because it's about the length of a letter M. And then there's an N dash, which is a shorter. I know, it's in this exciting. I know, you guys can hardly wait. Riveting, edge of your seat. And did you know, I'm going to make this as I'm going to hype up the dash thing as much as possible. Did you know? Scandalous. The N dash. It's often, yeah, buckle up. You'll need to. I'll turn it over to Terry soon, I promise. The N dash. It's often used to denote a range of things, like between dates or information. Now, the M dash, ooh, it is scandalous, sexy, striking, and what a versatile piece of grammar. Now, I'm going to blow your minds. We've been using M dashes all throughout how it works up until this moment. Woo! M dashes all over the place. This is probably, no, I was going to say, is this the stupidest thing I've ever done at a big book study? No, probably not. And actually, that should worry all of us deeply. Anywho, so an M dash, it's got a whole variety of uses. It works like a comma. It can work like a semicolon. It could be like, hey, we're going on a tangent. Pew, pew. That's what it can be for. Now, I believe in the context of what we're using the M dash for and how Bill Wilson has used the M dash in this part of the book up to this point. It is for emphasis and to explain additional information. Oh, sexy. What the heck does that have to do with anything? Well, the main point, what we're seeing is that we admitted we were powerless over alcohol in step 1. What does it mean to be powerless over alcohol? The powerlessness is not, once I take a drink, I cannot control the amount that I take. That's part of it. But what makes me powerless over alcohol, or powerless over what brings you to this all-inclusive study, is that I can't stop myself from taking that first one. That is what makes me powerless. And so, for emphasis, an additional piece of information, our lives had become unmanageable. You see, if I can't drink, but I can't stay sober, but I can't drink, but I can't stay sober, but I can't stay sober, but I can't drink, but I can't drink, but I can't stay sober, that to me points to the unmanageability. And what I really want to see in step one is that, oh no, I am going to drink again. And I will say, I maybe shouldn't say this with as much confidence as I'm going to, but I'm going to say it. I think that was the sexiest explanation of an M dash that you might ever see. That might, actually, please, if you find a sexier one, maybe don't send it to me. It's too scandalous. Uh, the M dashes versus N dashes. I am so sorry. Gosh. All righty. So step two. It says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, I'm gonna do the share screen. We can break down, and I'm gonna be quick. That's probably a lie. Uh, what's the greatest lie ever told? Is I'll wrap up with this. You know, biggest lie we ever tell in AA or CA or whatever 12-step fellowship. So when we look at step two, we can break down the second step into 2 points in 2 parts. Part one, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, and I can stop there. Is it possible that there is a power greater than myself? And I can see the legions of recovered alcoholics, recovered addicts, recovered codependents, people that are happy and sober at the same time. And they said that a higher power made that possible. And so is it possible that there could be a power greater than myself? By the way, if we took step one, we just admitted that our alcoholism or addiction or whatever is bigger than us. So could there be another one? And then part two is that power could restore us to sanity. Could that power relieve from us the obsession of the mind, the thought that takes us back again and again and again to the first drink, despite, or first drug, or first compulsive action, despite the fact that it is ruining our lives? Is that possible? And whoop, I'm trying to move quickly. So it says three, made a decision. And the third step is simply a decision. I won't say just because it's a big one. Anyone ever here don't make any big decisions in your first year? I mean, I'm just going to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of this power that I barely believe in and I don't really like and I got a whole lot of baggage with, you know? Okie doke, the big decision. But it is simply a decision. And it is a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Now, where I live in the world, a lot of people, and I think I've heard it a lot of places, that our will is our thoughts and our lives are actions. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. But I heard it's actually a sponsee of mine. And what he was saying was that idea of what if our will was our actions and our lives are the results? Anyone have a thought in your head you can't get out? You just, some of us have been like first thought, wrong thought, or whatever it is. I don't know. But it's like, what if my will is my actions and my lives are the results? And again, if you are like, I vehemently disagree with you, and that you smell bad, Paige. Two things. One, you can't smell me, but you're not wrong. And I am wrong. So don't you worry about it. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm over here being wrong and smelly. It's fine. All right. And it says to the care of God. And I want to emphasize when we're turning our will and our life over to the care of God, think of the things in your life that you have cared for. To be cared for is to be loved and nurtured and treated with respect. And man, there is no worse hands than my life to be in than mine. I have not cared for my life. In fact, I have dragged my life through the mud. I've dragged I have burnt it to the ground multiple times. I am a fire safety hazard when it comes to my life. Absolutely not. And I also want to point out my will and my life do not get turned over in step three. That's not where this happens. Just like if Howard's right by Orlando, Terry's in Yonkers. Step one is like, man, if I stay in Calgary, Alberta, I'm a relapse. That's step one. Step two is not gaslighting them about the existence of Orlando or Yonkers. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, oh, I know, Orlando. You think that there's like a Disney park nearby, magical place. Oh, bless your heart, you sweet summer child. I just need to not gaslight. Yonkers, okay. You live in Yonkers? Oh, is that like I just need to not gaslight them. I don't need to know anything about Orlando or Yonkers. I don't need to know where they are, what it looks like, what the sports team is to root for, the humidity. I don't need to know any of that. I just need to not gaslight them. Now, in the third step, I'm making a decision, and that is a decision to go there. And if I don't, book a plane ticket, go get my passport, get to the airport, get on the plane. If I don't, I won't get there. So my will in my life does not get turned over in step 3. My will in my life gets turned over as I take the course of action, especially 4 through 9. That's really the engine of this thing that gets me to that recovered state. And then it says, as we understood him. Now, I know it is tempting to be like, I don't understand. Maybe the God of our misunderstanding. But one of the things that I will point out is I've got that 1930s dictionary because, don't you guys know I will light up a party with my scandalous talk about M dashes. Woo! And in my 1930s dictionary, the word understand means to know through experience. And so at the third step, I'm not going to have that experiential understanding of this power, but that is what we are building through this course of action. So it goes on to say, so that's what we're after. We're after that experience. It says, 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, which is rude because I was making a whole bunch of inventories about a whole bunch of other people for a long time. I got to have to look at me. Not cool, man. All right. And 5, admitted. Now, there's 2 ways to look at the word admitted. One is that it's a bit of a confession. And some of y'all know I'm going to use my typical, you know what's coming. I got to admit that I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. A bit of a confession. And y'all know I would never do that. It was linoleum. You guys know. All right. So that's one way to look at the word admit. Now, I know we got a couple Jets fans here. So let's say the Jets were in the Super Bowl, and thank goodness there was nobody in crisis, and Terry and Eileen were able to go, and any other Jets fans. And so they were able to go to the Super Bowl, and they had their Super Bowl tickets. And on those tickets, what it would say is admit 1. So another way to look at the word admit is not simply a confession, but a letting in of God and another human being. That's another way to look at it. And then it says to ourselves, to another human being. And when we say another, I mean, we're beginning to really see the true humility. I'm no better than others. I'm no worse than others, that we are all equal. And I talk about this a lot, that I will never look in the eyes of somebody that God does not love, which also does not mean we need like blinders or I'm not looking. That's not the approach either. But that we are all equal and worthy. And so the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So our job in step 6 is willingness, and that's it. God is going to do the removing. And as was pointed out in the original manuscript, it said 7, humbly on our knees. I'm a little grateful we don't have to do that because, again, I got some barriers to getting back up again. Humbly on our knees asked him to remove our shortcomings. And in the original manuscript, it says holding nothing back. And if you're here today and you're like, well, what's the difference between the exact nature of my wrongs, my defects of character, and my shortcomings? Well, if you disagree with me, I want you to know that you are right. You are absolutely correct and I am wrong. But for me, from my perspective, it's the same thing. It's the same thing because it does not make sense for me to be aware of something in step 5, to become then willing for something else to be removed, and then to ask for a third separate thing to go. Doesn't it make the most sense to become aware of the things that are blocking me in 5? Become willing for them to be taken from me, root and branch, and then to ask for them to go. And to be fair, I will say, if you disagree, you're right and I'm wrong. But they did ask Bill Wilson, and he said, no, I just didn't want to use the same word too many times. That's not cool in literary convention. Uh, and he would know he's using those M dashes. He's an M dash sort of man. Woo! You flirty guy with those M dashes. Okay, focus page. All right. All right. So 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And as Terry was talking about, we're emphasizing the willingness and we're emphasizing the all. And then in 9, it said, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So I am going to make amends to all of them, except if it's going to hurt them or somebody else. 10, and as Terry pointed out, it says continued, which is not cool. Continued. Like, what do you mean? I got to keep doing this as a way of life? Oh, the next thing you know, Paige is going to say, like, your life depends on it because it does, because that's how I natter on. What do you mean? Yes, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Where did I learn to take personal inventory? Step 4. When did I begin to admit my wrongs? Step 5. What do I follow that up with? 6 and 7. And how do I set right my wrongs? I learned how to do that mostly in 9, but in 8 and 9. So what is step 10? It's a continuation of the process 4 through 9. That's what it is. It goes on to say, 11, sought. And as Terry was referencing Scott Lee, his sponsor was Sandy B, and Sandy B spoke about there is different levels of seeking. Some of you with toddlers know that there's a level of seeking when they're looking for their socks that you put on their bed. It's like, can't find them. It's right there, right? Or, you look at the fridge and can't find it, and the person you ask, it's like, it's right there. Oh, it's the worst. But we're going to seek through prayer and meditation. And I'll let you know, I read that as and or for a while. And or meditation. And meditation. Oh, yeah, looking for a remote. Yeah, that is already in your hands. Oh, yeah. You call somebody or text them, I can't find my phone. It's that vibe. It's that vibe. And when it says to improve, you know what's annoying about the word improve? It doesn't say improve until I'm a perfect little spiritual being. Nope. It just says improve. I got to keep growing in this thing. And so improve through prayer and meditation, our conscious contact with God. Now, the word conscious means with knowing. It's in its etymological roots, with knowing. So in step 2, we agnostics, I am without knowledge. And I develop through 4 through 9 and continuing that process, I deepen that relational, experiential with knowing. At this point, I'm having an experience and I'm deepening it. And just like I couldn't stay well on one drink, I cannot stay well on one experience. It goes on to say, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out, which again is rude, because what about my service pony? Clip clop, my service pony and my service tiara. I have a sticky on my wall that says personal ambition has no place in AA, but where's my tiara? So not praying for that. But I can pray, God help me to be willing to do your will. God help me to be kind, patient, loving, because I can't do it on my own. Like that's what we're talking about. Anyway, 12. Now, step 12, as it's written, has 3 parts. The first part is a promise. It says, having had, oh, thank you for the tiara, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Now, in the original manuscript, as was pointed out, it said having had a spiritual experience. So for me, I take experience and awakening as synonyms. Some people take experience to be something more sudden and awakening more gradual. But that's not a hill that I die on. I don't care. But it starts with a promise. And that is the same promise that Ebby Thatcher made to Bill. Ebby Thatcher says, Bill Wilson says, my friend promised that when these things were done, this course of action was taken, that he would have a new relationship with a new attitude and a new relationship with his creator, a way of life which answered all his problems. That's what is available. And it is a promise that is made to us. These 12 steps are alcoholic proof. And they're addict proof and they're compulsive, whatever brings you to this study proof. They have to be because they're for people like us. And if I do this to the best of the genuine best of my ability, I will have this experience. And that is a promise. And then it says, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. This one. This is the message. The message of the 12 steps to produce a spiritual awakening. So working with others, even on Super Terry, we should get him a little gold star for like receiving a fifth step on the Super Bowl. I'm gonna do that at some point. I feel like, but yeah, even on Super Bowl Sunday, right? We carried this message, and then it says to practice these principles in all our affairs. And at YPAW meetings, they'll be like, "Oh, having affairs," or I can't remember quite what they yell. Like that's not in line with sex con. Anywho, yelling something like that. But the idea is that we practice. And what are these principles? Again, I'm going to be a little contentious, not all the way contentious, but a little bit. That the principles are not for me nebulous concepts like hope and faith and courage and brotherly love and justice, but instead the principles are the tangible actions of the 12 steps. And that's something I can practice. Because if you're on I referenced the I-95 last night. If you're on the I-95 and you're stuck in traffic, man, it is hard to pull tolerance out of nowhere. It's hard to pull patience out of nowhere. But I can pray. I can bring myself to the present moment. I can practice the 10th step. I can find ways to be of service. I can do this in a practical way. So practice these principles in all our affairs. And you know what? Over to you, Terry. Pew, pew.
Thanks, Paige. And it's funny because Scott Lee would say if he's stuck in traffic, he would put on a clown nose, bust out bubbles, and start blowing bubbles at people. And he would say, "I'd splash love on you, and it splatters back on me." Right? Talk about talk about demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Go be a joy bringer, and in all your affairs, right? So, okay, so many have explained what an order. I can't go through with it. I mean, it's pretty daunting. I believe that How It Works was written what in December 1938, right? Yeah. And then the book was published in April of 1939. I believe Bill had, I don't know, under an hour he wrote this. And they were basically following the six tenets of the Oxford group. Imagine waking up one day and you see 12. The F is this? Imagine today I woke up and there was 24 steps, double that. What an order. I can't go through with it. I'll be fucking pissed off. Sorry for my language, right? But the steps are like a clock. They're a circle. They're meant to be lived. And sooner or later these numbers are gonna have to come off the actual steps and you're gonna have to integrate these principles as a way of life, right? So don't look at these steps like they need to be done. They look at them as they have to be lived. Right? Hold on. What's up, buddy? Okay. Okay. I can't go through with it. Yeah, you can. Don't be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. Yet again, when they are mentioning principles, they are talking about the steps. I don't know who came up with the principles behind the steps, but when we are reading the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when they say the word principles, they are talking about these steps. What does it say? We are not saints. Now, I'm not a saint, not even close. I love talking about how flawed I am, but I have met a couple people that actually gave the impression that they were saints, especially people who had zero resentments when we got to their inventory. Hey, I got no resentments. I'm angry at no one. And I said to them, looks like I'm sponsoring a saint. No, we're not saints, not at all, right? But the point is that I'm willing to grow along. Very key. Just I think those are the two most important words. Grow along. We talked about growing up when I was going through the 12 steps with you. Yes, no, or maybe. Am I willing to grow along with these steps current today? Right? I can get very complacent in this, especially when I have a down season or I'm in the weeds, right? Am I willing to grow along these spiritual lines? The principles or the steps we have set down are guides to progress. we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. It does not say we claim progress rather than perfection. It says spiritual, right? I'll just read the next ones and then page go back and rip it up like you do. You like a ninja tonight with these steps, right? I like that M dash, right? It also says on page 62 with the M dash, right? Selfishness, and then the M dash goes into self-centeredness. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I just thought about that. Okay. Our description of the alcoholic. Hold on. Where's the description at? If you actually go on page 22, I'm kind of holding my kid right now, but when it says on 22, this description should fit us roughly. I think that's what it says. What description? Of the real alcoholic. And I remember reading these pages and I'm like, the description of people who I know people who have memorized how it works so they can say it in an actual meeting because they want to sound cool, but they don't know where the actual description of an alcoholic is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. What about the chapter to the agnostic with we agnostics, right? And our personal stories before, I guess, before Bill's spiritual experience or before drinking or after a spiritual experience. I don't know, Paige, you could help me with the interpretation on that. Make clear three pertinent ideas that A, that I'm an alcoholic and that I cannot manage my own life. And yet again, that's the light, right? That's just bringing me to the observation that am I convinced of that? Am I convinced that I'm an alcoholic? How do I know an alcoholic? Go back and read the last 60 pages and see if this book is a book of mirrors, right? See if your experience is plugged in it, right? This book is just a book of codes. And when you plug in order to release these codes, you plug in your experience and the book comes alive. And you just literally start to look at it as like a book of mirrors. Oh, you just punched me like this. Got me good, Phoenix. All right. All right. He's a little restless right now, so I'll get you going. That B, that probably no human power could relieve me of my alcoholism. Look at all your life, where all the human powers in your life, were they able um to relieve your alcoholism? What's also, rehab is a human power. Anyone think about that? Sober living is also a human power as well. Hiding behind walls is another form of human power. I mean, I know when I was in sober living, there was someone who was in a sober living for 4 years. 4 years. Think about that. That doesn't sound like freedom. That sounds like I'm just scratching and crawling and hitting my bed, my pillow, and saying, you know what, today's a victory. I didn't drink today. That's a lot of agony and a lot of torture to go through life. That doesn't sound like I'm living in the world of the spirit. It sounds like I'm still living in bondage, that I'm still suffering from alcoholism, that I'm still a victim of a predator. I'm still listening to the predator that's in my mind. No human power could relieve me of this. Am I convinced of that? Am I thoroughly convinced that my mom couldn't stop me? My wife couldn't stop me? I mean, if my son was alive back then, he would not stop me. I'd leave him. I mean, I'm sorry, buddy, but I would leave you and go down to the Bronx and I'd cop cocaine. If hypothetically, if that were the case, when I was being in the grips of my illness, like I said, it's like having sex with a kangaroo. The sex don't stop until the kangaroo stops, and I don't care if you're in I will run you over with a Mack truck in order to get high and drunk. Like, period. Right? Nothing could relieve me of my alcoholism. But it says that God could and would, and if he were sought. Now, in the original manuscript, it said God can and will if he were sought. Am I convinced of that? Am I convinced of that? And why would I be? And I believe it said in the original manuscript as well, if you're not convinced of those threes, reread this book, right? Or just toss this book out. Sorry, I was about to toss this book out, right? If you're not convinced, go back and drink. Like I can't. Look, I hate to say it, but the greatest police force in Alcoholics Anonymous or any 12-step fellowship is alcohol. It will get you back in here and it will beat you to the point that you're like, yep, I have to look at this God idea or I'm screwed. Like, I'm screwed. And I can't, these are ideas. It says pertinent ideas. Steps one and two are something you can't just take. They're experiential, right? Like, I remember I was talking to some guy, he's like, I'm working on step two. And I'm like, I ain't doing that. Like, what are you doing? And he tried to explain to him, like, I'll help you right now. Are you willing to believe there's a power greater than yourself? Yes, no, or maybe. Yeah, I believe. Okay. Congratulations. You just took step two. And you already took step two, man. Think about it. You came to this all-inclusive study with a willingness to believe that you get something out of it. What is that but practicing step two or experiencing step two? You know, with step one, I can't give you pain. I can't give you misery. I can't give you the kangaroo experience, right? That is yours and yours alone. I, and I can't give that to you. This is all an experiential process. And when you have that experience and you are convinced, then we are ready to look at step three. Right? Then I'm ready to rock and roll, right? Because all the steps is just kind of like a revolving door. Like we go through step one, it opens up the door for two. We go through two, it opens up the door for three. We do for three, it opens up the door for four. It gives me an open mind, open mind, open mind. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. That's why I'm such a huge advocate on explaining and showing alcoholism in this book to another person with their own experience. And I would talk about my experience to kind of give some levity to the situation where they talk about themselves. And then they start seeing themselves in this book and say, me too. And that's probably the coolest words I've heard in Alcoholics Anonymous, like, me too, me too. All right, Sage, back to you. Pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew. And yeah, Howard put the quote in the chat where it's like you have to reread it up to this point or throw it away. Which I will say, anyone here the first time you read the book by yourself and you're like, I'm not nothing like this. I do think that could have been a ploy to increase book sales. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, I threw it out. I did another one. All right, so I'm gonna read. I'm gonna read the paragraph through the lens of a YPAW meeting because I think it just helps illuminate some things. So many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." And then we'll yell, "I'm so discouraged!" Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles, but we're saints. We are not saints. What's the point? The point is we're willing to grow along spiritual lines, and then they'll be like outside issues, because lines, and then people go outside tissues, uh, you know, uh, and so one of the things is this is another beautiful example of the book meeting us where we're at. You see, the book is not expecting me to be perfectly willing. The book is expecting me to be like, whoa, I can't do it. I'm so discouraged. That's too much. You're asking too much of me. And it is going to meet us where we are and take us where we need to go. So we're never going to be perfect. But as Terry was saying, the point is growth. And one of the few hills, I got like four, that I will die on is exactly what Terry mentioned. It is not progress, not perfection. It is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Because as Terry was saying, human power is not sufficient. And so often we confuse material progress with getting well, right? How often have we got the car, got the relationship, got the job, got the house, got let back into the house, we get the promotion, we get the money, we go to the gym, we're getting the body, we're getting it all, and none of that is sufficient to keep us sober. None of that works. So it is not how am I progressing, it is how am I progressing spiritually. The only thing that can keep me sober is a spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience that I grow and I deepen over time. I couldn't stay well on one drink. I sure as heck couldn't stay well on one hoot of crack. I always needed more. And that's my experience here. In varieties of religious experience, it spoke about how people would have these experiences and how common and normal it is to backslide and to fall away, and complacency is a killer. Terry was talking about that last week and the week before. Complacency is a killer because it allows fears and resentments and selfishness and self to build up and to block out the sunlight of the spirit. And when I am disconnected, I will relapse. That is this illness. Now, it says we are not saints. And an interesting thing about that is, and what he's saying is like, we're not going to have to be perfect. You're not going to have to live up to the four absolutes of the Oxford group. We'll just meet you where you're at. But there's a gentleman by the name of Thomas Merton, and he was a pretty, he was a Trappist monk, and he was a pretty like non-denominational, like he explored a lot of spirituality through that lens. And he described being a saint as being the truest version of yourself. And years ago, I maybe shouldn't share this with you, but you're getting this information. Yikes. Warning, I had a thought maybe not to do it, and I'm doing it anyways. Years ago, I was not somebody that received compliments well, not that I thrive at that today, but I would often respond with sarcasm and like avoiding. And especially as it pertained to my disability, if people would be like, "Oh, you're so inspirational," I'd be like, "Bleh." And I would say something condescending, not condescending, passive aggressive and sarcastic, and I would say, "Throw me on a dollar store candle." Well, I said that one too many times, and a sponsee of mine, I did not do this for myself. So a sponsee of mine. Now I'll tell you this part of the story first. She made this order, and she heard back from the person, and she's like, "I am so sorry." I am so sorry. When we sent your order out for delivery, it got stolen. So I had to make and send another one. So what that means is there's two of these out in the world. I just, it says WWPD, which, gosh, yeah, I know. I did not make that for myself. I have it. I just thought I'd show you. Yeah. Uh, Now, here's something that genuinely happened. I was in meditation, and I was having like, it was a serious meditation, but there was something that came to me when I was in meditation, and it was that idea that I didn't want to be a saint. I wanted to live my life so that the people around me, the people that I helped, that they got to be saints, the truest version of who they were called to be, who God always wanted them to be, who they want to be, and never felt like they could have. That was something that came strongly to me. And so growth is the name of the game. Now, when it says spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, in a religious context, the word perfection would mean to be in a state without sin. If you don't like that word, and it carries a lot of baggage, throw it out, use shortcoming or defective character. But I will also point out the word sin is also an archery term, and it simply means to miss the mark. But any of us who have done any work know the impossibility of living without defective character. Like, it's just, perfectly free of shortcomings. Woo! Like, yeah. But we are striving towards this becoming who we truly are, knowing that we will continue to fall short. And that is the beautiful duality of this thing. If I keep aiming, I will fall short, but I will continue to grow and deepen that profound and powerful experience. Now, to end, we right on the hour, so I'll wrap up real quick. What I want to point out is in the three pertinent ideas. Also, I love that it said our adventures, because oh boy, weren't they adventures? And that's a nice way to like sort of zhuzh it up. I'm passed out in my own closet, pissed my pants. It's an adventure. I mean, no, you guys don't relate, just me. Cool, cool, cool. But the first pertinent idea that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives is a step one idea. B, that no human power could have relieved our alcoholism is also a step one idea. If a human power was sufficient, well, I could have just relied on that. So it's a step one idea. And the step two idea is that God could and would if he were sought. And in step three, we're going to make the decision to seek. And if you're like, "I don't believe you," I mean, the next line says being convinced we were at step three, because they took out the throw the book away, which is probably good they did, because we don't like being told what to do. So thank you all so much. I'll stop the recording and we can wrap it up with a prayer.